Hey guys, I'm Papa Pete and welcome to today's episode of the INTY Homebrew Spotlight. In today's episode, I'm going to feature a game by Intelligentvision, specifically created by David Harley, and that is Battlestar Galactica Space Battle. Very special game created in the summer of 2020. There's a lot of backstory behind this game, so stick around and we'll get right to it and see what I think of the game.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age of 50, you don't have to.
After the video, don't forget to check out IntellivisionCollector.com for all your Intellivision needs. That's IntellivisionCollector.com. The original Space Battle was released in 1979, one of the very first games released for the Intellivision system, and it's got a very interesting backstory behind it because one of the things people notice when they first see the game is how much the enemy fighters in the game resemble Cylon Raiders, which were from Battlestar Galactica. Well, back in that day, the Mattel crew at Intellivision, Mattel Electronics, really sort of assumed that they would have the license for Battlestar Galactica to use in their games because Mattel had the license for different toy products and for also other electronic games. Well, truth be known, what ended up happening is they didn't have the license for the video game market, so they had to strip all references to Battlestar Galactica from the game and just release it as Space Battle. For more information on this backstory, check out my episode of the 125, Season 1, Episode 12, where I go into the entire history and do a review of the original Space Battle game for Intellivision. As with a lot of the Intelligentvision games, this isn't really a construction of an entirely new game, but it's rather, I'll call it a hack or a reskinning of a game that's a classic game on the system, to try to make improvements and make it even better. And this is a specialization of David Harley. And I know that I've just recently reviewed Shark 2, which was very, very similar, but probably not quite as ambitious as the resurfacing that he did with Space Battle. With all that in mind, the focus of this review isn't going to be as much on the gameplay itself. I'm not going to explain the game itself to you because you probably are already familiar with Space Battle. And if you aren't, again, go back and watch my episode of the 125 on the subject. But you're probably already aware of it. So we'll talk about the improvements that David made and whether he succeeded in making a product that overall was better than the original. And ultimately, that's the entire purpose of any sort of hack or recreation of a classic title. So the first thing's very obvious. It took the generic Space Battle name and put it back into the Battlestar Galactica universe. Fantastic as far as I'm concerned. I love Battlestar Galactica. It's not a very hot topic this day and age. It was really super popular back right after the Star Wars crave of 1977, and it lasted only until 1980. But it was very, very interesting, very popular. I remember living through those days and getting on the school bus Monday morning and talking about Starbuck and Apollo, the adventures they'd had the night before. And it's fantastic for this game to be put back into that license, into that world where it could have been originally back in 1979. So how exactly did David do it? First of all, let's talk about the sounds. He took the game itself and he added IntelliVoice capacity to the game, and he also put the theme song at the very beginning when he changed the title screen. But he did a very good job incorporating the song, and I'll play it right here, into that title. So I have to listen to it every time I play. You can hit the button to start the game and you'll skip over the title music, but I like to listen to it every time I play it. It really is done very well. Now, as for the voices, David has taken a lot of the voices from other games, such as Good Shot from B-17 Bomber, or several other things from B-17 Bomber. That was close. And also games like Bomb Squad. You did it, you're a hero. That's in the game from Bomb Squad. Then there's other sounds, of course, from Space Spartans that are in the game. The battle is over. But anyway, the point being is he recreated and took these sounds which already existed, brought them into this game in very logical fashion, and it really enhances the gameplay as you're going through the game. Now, other than the addition of the music and these IntelliVoice capacities, I really don't find the sounds much different from the original Space Battle. But that's not a bad thing, because if it isn't broke, don't fix it, right? The sounds were great in Space Battle, and they're great in Battlestar Galactica, the Space Battle as well.
Good shot!
Now let's talk about the graphics. There were some color changes on the title screen and in the radar screen, or the map screen I like to call it. But there's other more significant graphical changes as well. First of all, let's talk about just on the radar screen. Most notably, instead of just a square at the center of the screen, it's a picture of the Galactica itself. You'll also notice at the top of the radar screen is a number that starts off at 0, and that's the number of enemies that you've killed during that game. There's also a number at the bottom, and that number is a little bit confusing, but what it shows you the number of enemies that are left that haven't entered the screen in a squadron yet. So it's not the total number of enemies that you have to kill for that game, but it's the number that are still in reserve. You have 5 squadrons of enemies on the screen at any given time, plus all the ones, that number at the bottom, that's how many reserves there are that will come at you as you eliminate the original squadrons. Now, as for the battle screen, the Cylon Raiders, they look like Cylon Raiders before, so they use the exact same ones for this game. But a couple things they did change. The reticle or crosshair looks quite a bit different than before. It basically is it's circular, and it is the same size as the explosion that occurs when your lasers hit the screen. So it's your hit target that you're aiming at the enemy ships with. A little bit better. I think it makes a little bit more sense. And then you also have the enemy shots that are coming at you. Instead of just being 2 squares that go from white to red when they're dangerous to you, it's a swirling type shot, just like in Space Spartans almost, that comes at you. But it's harmless when it comes towards you until it turns red right at the very end. Very well done. Good improvement, and it really does add to the game.
Got 'em.
So let's talk a little bit about the gameplay itself and the improvements that David's made to make the space battle experience better. First of all, I mentioned a little bit before about how the numbers on the radar screen shows you the number of enemies that are yet to come onto the screen. Well, let's talk about that. Basically, in the original space battle, you start off the game with 5 squadrons of enemies on the screen, and when they're all gone, you've won the game. Not the case in Battlestar Galactica. As you eliminate those squadrons, which may be large, may be small, there's still a reserve of more enemies to fight, which are coming on the screen all the time. There's always going to be 5 squadrons until you've eliminated all those extra enemies. Well, let's talk about a couple different things that are in the actual battle screen itself. And first and foremost, when you've blown up that last enemy fighter in the squadron, you actually have to hit on the keypad the radar screen button to go back to the radar screen, where it's automatic in original Space Battle. I don't know exactly why this happens. I don't really see the benefit of that. But overall, it's not really... It's not a detrimental feature at all. I just don't really see the benefit of it. Now, the next feature that occurs is of definite benefit, and that is when you have a squadron that's gone out to attack, or when you have one of your squadrons that's gone out to attack an enemy squadron, and you finish the battle, when you go back out to the radar screen to take control of another squadron, the first one automatically returns to base. Back in the original Space Battle, it was very easy to send a squadron way out to the edge of the screen, and then with things being so frantic, you go to your yellow or white, and you change to a different squadron to attack, and you forget about the first one, and it would stay way out there until it was too late. Meanwhile, the enemy fighters, the enemy squadron would continue to get closer to your mothership, and then you'd have one way out there that was of no use to you anymore because you couldn't get it back in time to save your mothership. It automatically now starts going back to the Galactica, or the mothership in this case, and I think that's a great feature that David added, and it really does add to the gameplay and makes it a much better playing game. Another thing I want to talk about is probably the most important feature that David has added. Is you used to have 4 levels of difficulty in Space Battle, and when you started a game at a certain level, it basically stayed that way for the entire game. What I find with Battlestar Galactica Space Battle is as you process through the game, as you destroy more and more enemies, the enemies toward the end, the AI tends to bump up and it gets more and more difficult as the game goes on. I found it lots of times, even in skill levels 2 or 3, At the beginning, I don't have a whole lot of problem with it. I can blow everything up, but then the difficulty ramps up so high towards the end that it's a real challenge to get through those games. Matter of fact, I don't know that I've ever beaten the game at the highest difficulty, maybe even the second from highest. But frankly, I have beaten it at the easiest difficulty and the next one. But it makes it for a better challenge because as the game goes on, it gets more and more difficult, which is exactly how it should be. There is one little thing in Battlestar Galactica Space Battle that I really, really dislike. And that is, of course, we all know that you can let the computer fight for you, but it's never going to do as well as when you're fighting yourself, right? They say that it's going to destroy about 3 enemies for every one that you lose. Fine, whatever. That's the way it always was with the original game as well. You always wanted to be in control of those squadrons when they intercepted the enemies. But what I'm finding is that in Battlestar Galactica Space Battle, once in a while, your squadron will get to the enemy squadron. You'll be sitting there waiting for it. Of course, it has to get there and start flashing, and you have to hit that button on the control pad, the keypad, to start the battle. Instantaneously, when your squadron intercepts the enemy squadron, one of your ships sometimes gets destroyed. Doesn't matter how fast you are with hitting that button to try to engage and take control of it yourself, right off the get-go, it destroys one of your fighters. And I didn't like that at all. I thought that was kind of unfair. Now, I'm going to qualify that as well, though. I'm not 100% sure that's not true with regular space battle as well, because sometimes they seem to go very, very quickly. But I'm going to say this. I don't remember it being as big of a problem in regular space battle as it is in Battlestar Galactica Space Battle. Overall, though, as far as negative things to talk about, that's about all that I've found for Battlestar Galactica Space Battle. Let's talk about the availability of Battlestar Galactica Space Battle. You could no longer buy the physical copy from Intellivision.us. It was released back in the summer of 2020, and it was very popular, and the physical copies sold out pretty quickly, let me tell you that. You can still, however, buy the ROM copy from them, and it's a great addition if you want to play it on your LTO Flash or your Ultimate Flashback. And frankly, I've got not only my physical copy here that I pre-ordered back at the time, but I bought the ROM as well. And I'm going to go back a little up on my soapbox again. Don't share ROMs, please. Make sure that when these ROMs are available, that for the small amount of money, I think the ROM for this is $10. And for $10, it's very much worth it to give it to the producers of these games so they continue making games. If we share games amongst the community without rewarding the people who create them, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. So anyway, yeah, you can pick up the ROM right now from Intellivision.us. If you want a physical copy, there have been some auctions on eBay recently, and it's selling for double and triple the money that it originally sold for. So you can still get them. They're still available every once in a while, but you definitely can get the ROM and play it in another way. And I highly recommend that you do so.
Starbase under attack.
So I got to be right up front. Space Battle is one of my top 10 favorite games for the Intellivision. Matter of fact, I put it at number 3 in my list that I created for the Intellivisionaries Podcast, episode 41. So, I guess the big question with Battlestar Galactica Space Battle is, did the changes that David Harley made to it improve the experience for me, or did it make it worse? And I'm going to wholeheartedly agree. I told you the only negative thing I found about it was when you lost a man instantaneously when your squadrons intercepted the enemy. But that's a pretty small thing. I'm not even sure that it's not the same way in the regular game. Sometimes it does, but not quite as frequently. So I would say the improvements that David has made has really made it a much better gaming experience. So back in episode 12 of the 125, I gave Space Battle, a game I love, a 9 out of 10. And if this is making a better experience for me, better graphics, I love the sound effects. I love the fact that it put the license from the original Battlestar Galactica concept back into the game. I love the difficulty increase that goes along with the game because it got so Space Battle you could play and you could pretty much beat it every time. This one is still challenging and I've been playing it a lot, let me tell you. So all of these improvements, I gave the original 9 out of 10, but then there's that one factor where your ships disappear or get destroyed instantaneously when your when your squadron intercepts an enemy. Everything into consideration, am I going to give it a 10 out of 10? No, I am going to give Battlestar Galactica Space Battle, it's right there, I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10. Well guys, that's it for today's episode of the Indie Homebrew Spotlight. Battlestar Galactica Space Battle. Fantastic throwback to an old series that we all loved when we were kids, and frankly that has a lot of history with Mattel and Intellivision back in the day. Really want to thank David Harley for making this adjustment to the game, and really commend him for the improvements that he made. Anyway guys, thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today. Don't forget to hit like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time in the next Indie Homebrew Spotlight. Take care.
Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. Papa Pete, the old ass gamer. If you haven't grown up by the age.
I'm Rick Reynolds of the Intellivisionaries Podcast, and you're watching Papa Pete, the old guy gamer.
What the